I should have known something was off the moment I walked into that hotel ballroom in Atlanta. The evening was supposed to be a celebration. Jenna, my wife of 8 years, had just made partner at her law firm and the company was throwing a formal dinner in her honor. She'd flown out a few days early for prep meetings and strategy sessions. I came later, flying in Friday afternoon after clearing my schedule, thinking this would be a good chance to celebrate her achievement and maybe reconnect a bit. Things had felt distant lately, but I chalked it up to work stress. We both had demanding careers. It happens. I remember the ballroom had these tall arched ceilings and soft amber lighting. The clink of silverware and low hum of conversation filled the air, layered over with the occasional burst of laughter. It was all very polished, very expensive. Jenna's firm had spared no expense. When I walked in, I scanned the room and found her seated near the center at a large circular table surrounded by colleagues in suits and dresses. She looked incredible, black cocktail dress, hair pinned just right, that confident way she carried herself when she was in her element. She didn't see me right away, so I took a second to observe from a distance, proud, but also something else. Something harder to pin down. Then I heard her voice rise above the others, unmistakable, a touch theatrical. "Oh, and this is my, house husband, Mark," she said, smirking. "He keeps the plants alive and the fridge stocked. It's very modern." The table burst out laughing. I stopped in my tracks, maybe 10 feet away. The words hit like a slap. I hadn't even made it to the table and somehow I was already part of the show. House husband? I'm not. I work remotely as a senior software engineer. 6-figure income. Benefits. I don't cook unless it's on the grill and I've never once voluntarily watered a plant. But even beyond the facts, it was the tone. She made me sound like a trophy spouse she kept around for errands and back rubs. When I finally reached the table, Jenna turned to me like nothing had happened, gave me that bright public smile and a kiss on the cheek. "There he is," she said. "The legend himself." I forced a laugh. "Guess I should have worn my apron, huh?" More chuckles from the group. Someone raised a glass in my direction. I smiled, nodded, tried to play along. But I wasn't okay. It wasn't just the comment, it was the ease with which she said it. Like this version of me, this caricature she had created for her peers, was a common joke. Like I was just one of her talking points, harmless, domesticated, forgettable. The subtext wasn't, "I love my husband." It was, "He's convenient." As the night wore on, I kept going through the motions. Smiling, shaking hands, sipping wine I didn't really want. Everyone seemed nice enough, ambitious, professional, charming in that law firm way. Jenna fit right in. She was magnetic in this crowd. I watched her light up as she moved between conversations, laughed at the right moments, told stories like a seasoned politician. And the weird thing? I was happy for her. Truly. She had worked hard for this. Late nights, impossible deadlines, political battles inside the firm, I'd seen it all from the sidelines. She earned that promotion. But somewhere in the middle of my second glass of wine, that first comment started echoing louder in my head. I kept replaying it. "House husband." It made me think of all the times she'd said something lately that rubbed me the wrong way, but I'd let slide. The work travel she wouldn't talk about. The inside jokes from people I didn't know. The way she seemed increasingly disconnected when we were home together, like I was a background character in her day. Back in the hotel room later that night, I brought it up casually, not accusing, just testing the waters. "Hey," I said as she sat at the vanity removing her earrings, "was that thing you said about me tonight, like, meant as a joke?" She laughed, not looking up. "Of course it was a joke. Come on, Mark. You know how intense those work dinners can get." I was trying to keep it light. I waited for her to add something, anything that would reframe it as a compliment. But nothing came. "I mean, I just thought it was a little weird, that's all," I said carefully. "You know I work, right?" Now she turned to me, amused. "Obviously. It's not like anyone believed you're a real house husband. Relax, it's just banter." She kissed me goodnight and turned off the light like the conversation was over. And maybe for her it was. I lay there awake longer than I'd expected to. Tried to tell myself I was overreacting. That it wasn't a big deal. That Jenna's humor could come off a little sharp in professional settings, but it wasn't personal. But it felt personal. It felt like the version of me she was showing to the world wasn't the person I actually was. It made me wonder how she described me when I wasn't there. What else she joked about. What else she didn't think I needed to know. That was the first night I felt it. The pull of something I couldn't quite name. Not suspicion exactly, but a question mark that hadn't been there before. A subtle shift. A misalignment. And I wish I could say I let it go. That I laughed it off and everything went back to normal. But the truth is that comment sat with me. Lodged somewhere deep in my chest. It wasn't just what she said, it was how easy it was for her to say it, and how natural it was for everyone else to laugh along. I started wondering if maybe she had been preparing this version of me for a while, the harmless, supportive husband who didn't mind taking a back seat. Maybe I had agreed to it without realizing. Maybe I'd become a prop in her story. That night in Atlanta was supposed to be a high point, a celebration. Instead, it marked the beginning of something else. Something quieter, more insidious. A slow unraveling I couldn't yet see. After the dinner in Atlanta, something changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in that way where the floor shifts beneath you just slightly, enough to throw off your balance. I came home with a strange feeling I couldn't shake, like I'd been watching a movie of my own life and suddenly realized I wasn't the lead character anymore. At first, I convinced myself I was just being overly sensitive. Maybe I was projecting. Jenna had worked incredibly hard to get where she was, and if she wanted to let loose a little at work events, so be it. That's what I told myself. But if I'm honest, the joking introduction was just the first crack in a wall that had been showing hairline fractures for a while. Once I started paying attention, it felt like things were unraveling faster than I could process them. First came the phone. Jenna had always been a little private with her devices. Not unusual, just typical boundaries. But when we got back from Atlanta, she started acting cagey. She changed her phone password, which she hadn't done in years. If I happened to walk into the room while she was texting, the screen flipped face down like muscle memory. She'd start getting up to take calls outside, or say things like, "This is work stuff, you wouldn't care," even when I hadn't asked. At first, I assumed it was work. She was a partner now, that meant more clients, more pressure, more behind-the-scenes politics. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. But there were moments, small, easy to overlook, that started to build into a pattern. Like the night I came downstairs to grab water around midnight and saw her sitting on the couch in the dark, phone glowing in her hand. She jumped when I walked in. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Just catching up on emails," she said, not looking at me. Her screen lit up with a message that she swiped away before I could make out the name. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, grabbed my glass, and walked back upstairs. But something about her posture, shoulders hunched, legs pulled in, felt like a teenager hiding a secret. Then there were the late nights at the office. At first, they came once or twice a week, expected with her new role. I even encouraged it, told her I was proud of her. But soon it was every night. She'd leave the house around 7 a.m. and wouldn't get home until well after 9 p.m., sometimes later. Dinner grew cold. I'd text to check in, and her replies would be curt or delayed. "Swamped tonight or don't wait up." I told myself to be patient. I reminded myself this was the life we signed up for. But that nagging feeling from the celebration dinner kept growing louder. Like static I couldn't tune out. The worst part was, even when she was home, she wasn't there. We used to sit on the couch and binge shows together, talk about our days, dream about vacations we never took. Now it was like talking to a ghost. She'd zone out halfway through conversations, respond with empty nods, glance at her phone mid-sentence. We stopped touching. Kissing became quick, perfunctory. S*X became rare, then non-existent. One morning, she left in such a rush she forgot her travel mug. I ran out to hand it to her as she was pulling out of the driveway. She thanked me but didn't kiss me goodbye. I stood there holding the empty cup, wondering if this was what it felt like when someone starts slipping through your fingers. Not all at once, but like water draining slowly from a crack in the bottom. The most obvious red flag came a few weeks later. I had borrowed Jenna's car because mine was in the shop. She had taken mine that morning, and I was running errands when I noticed a paper coffee cup wedged between the passenger seat and the console. It had a name written on the side in bold marker, Eli, followed by a little heart. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't mine. And unless Jenna had changed her name to Eli, it wasn't hers either. It looked fresh, not days old, but maybe from that morning. I turned it over in my hands, hoping it was some innocent thing. Maybe a barista got the name wrong. Maybe she picked up a drink for someone at work. But then I saw the note on the lid, "Thanks for the rescue mission, you're my hero today," with a smiley face. It didn't feel like a barista's message. It felt personal. That night, I waited for the right moment and brought it up. "I saw that coffee cup in your car," I said casually, watching her reaction. Her expression didn't change much. A slight twitch, maybe. Then she laughed. "Oh, yeah, it's from Eli. He's this new associate." Long story, he spilled his coffee during a meeting, so I offered to grab him another one on my lunch break. It's like this running joke now. He calls me his coffee savior. It's stupid. She said it with a smirk, like it was so harmless she barely remembered it. Then she added, "He's, 24 and scared of his own shadow." "Don't worry, babe." I didn't press further. I told her it was fine. But that night, while brushing my teeth, I stared at my own reflection and realized something that chilled me. I didn't believe her. Not fully. Not in the way I used to. It wasn't that I had proof. It wasn't that I thought she was definitely cheating. It was that I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't getting the full story anymore. That she had started living a second life just far enough out of my reach that I couldn't call it betrayal, but I also couldn't call it marriage. I kept trying to justify things. To find explanations that would make it all make sense. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she was just tired. But each time I thought I had a handle on it, something else would happen. A voicemail she'd delete before I could hear it. A text she'd answer in the bathroom. A strange look on her face when I mentioned a weekend trip, as if committing to plans with me required some kind of negotiation. I started to notice that she never posted about me anymore. Not that she used to flood her socials with our relationship, but there was a time when birthdays, anniversaries, or even random dinner photos would make an appearance. Now it was only work *TS. Office happy hours. Group photos where I didn't recognize anyone. When I mentioned it once half joking, she waved it off. "Social media's toxic," she said. "I'm trying to keep my personal life private." But it didn't feel private. It felt hidden. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion. It was the emotional distance. The sense that I could be standing right next to her and still feel like I was 100 miles away. Like we were play-acting the roles of husband and wife without any of the connection that used to come so naturally. And still, I said nothing. I told myself I needed to trust her. That accusing her of something without proof would do more harm than good. That maybe, just maybe, I was the one who needed to be better. More attentive. More available. So I waited. I listened. I observed. And all the while, something inside me was quietly breaking. There's this strange thing that happens when your gut already knows the truth before your brain catches up. You start seeing signs everywhere, things you would have dismissed before become patterns. Inconsistencies. Loose threads. And then one day, everything lines up and it clicks. Not as a thought. Not as a suspicion. As a fact. The night I found out for sure wasn't planned. In fact, it started as an attempt at something simple, spontaneous even. A gesture. A way to remind Jenna that I still cared. That despite all the growing distance, I was still here. Still trying. It was a Friday. I had just wrapped up early from a project and figured I'd surprise her by picking her up from work and taking her out for dinner, something we hadn't done in far too long. I grabbed a reservation at a place she used to love and drove into the city, nerves buzzing just enough to feel hopeful. Maybe this would be the reset button we needed. I texted her around 5:15, thinking of scooping you up from the office tonight. "You free for a quick getaway?" No reply. I waited another 10 minutes, then figured I'd just go surprise her in person. I'd done it before. She always used to love that. I imagined her lighting up when she saw me waiting outside, maybe a hug, a laugh. Maybe she'd finally put her phone away and talk to me like she used to. But that's not what happened. I pulled into the parking garage near her firm's building just before 6. The sun was dipping, casting long shadows over the concrete. I felt that nervous flicker in my chest, like a first date. I took the elevator up to the ground floor and walked into the lobby, heart steady, optimism carefully guarded. The security guard at the front desk nodded at me. We'd seen each other a few times before. "Evening," I said. "I'm just here to pick up my wife, Jenna Lawson." He gave me a confused look. "Oh. I think she left already. Maybe an hour ago?" I blinked. "She left?" "Yeah. She and another guy, tall, bald. Drives a gray BMW, I think. I remember because they came through together. He was helping carry a box or something." My mouth went dry. Did she mention where she was going? He shook his head. "Didn't say. Just kind of rushed out." I thanked him and stepped outside, standing on the sidewalk for a long minute, trying to make sense of what I just heard. A gray BMW. A man helping her carry something. No text, no call, no mention. I got back in my car and sat behind the wheel, staring at the dashboard. I wanted to believe it was nothing. That maybe it was a work thing. Maybe she forgot to tell me. Maybe she left her phone at the office. But deep down, I knew better. I didn't even think, I just drove. Straight home. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was something more. Whatever it was, it pulled me back like a magnet. I pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later and immediately noticed it, an unfamiliar car parked behind our trash bins. Gray BMW. Slightly tinted windows. My stomach turned. I led the engine and sat still. My mind raced through every possible scenario, but none of them ended well. When I walked toward the front door, I could hear something faint. Music. Laughter. I unlocked the door slowly, quietly, heart hammering in my chest. The house was dim, but there was a warm glow coming from upstairs. My feet moved before I told them to. Halfway up the stairs, I heard it. Her voice. A man's voice. Then more laughter, close, in mate, unfiltered. I froze outside our bedroom. The door wasn't fully shut, just cracked enough to see the edge of the bed, the blur of movement. Her laugh again, not forced, not polite. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Then his voice, you always do that when you're nervous. Another burst of laughter. Sheets rustling. I didn't go in. I didn't yell. I didn't kick the door down. I turned, walked downstairs, and stood in the middle of the living room. There, on the coffee table, sat the same coffee cup I'd found in her car weeks ago. The one with Eli and the little heart. Like it was placed there to taunt me. Like this wasn't a betrayal, just their usual Friday night. I sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at it. At our photo on the bookshelf across the room. At the keys she'd left on the counter. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not grief. Just hollow. When Jenna finally came downstairs, a full 10 minutes later, barefoot, hair tousled, wearing the same hoodie I used to steal for movie nights, she didn't look shocked. She didn't cry. She looked annoyed. Mark, she said, flat, almost irritated. Why are you here? That hit harder than anything else. Why was I here? In the house we shared? The house I helped pay for? The life I'd helped build? I stood up slowly. She crossed her arms. I thought you were working late, I said quietly. She shrugged. Plans changed. I nodded. So, Eli. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't deny it. Don't make this dramatic, she said, like I just asked her to change the thermostat. It's complicated. I stared at her, trying to recognize the woman I had once thought I would grow old with. But she wasn't there. Not anymore. Is this what you want now? I asked, not out of anger, just curiosity. She exhaled, looked away. It's not about wanting anything. You've been checked out for months. I just stopped pretending. That broke something in me. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded, grabbed my keys, and walked to the door. You're really just gonna leave, she said behind me. I paused for a moment, one hand on the handle. Then I said the last thing I would say to her for a long time, I already have. And then I left. I didn't remember most of the drive to Charlotte. Just the glow of passing headlights and the distant hum of the engine beneath me. No music. No phone calls. Just me and the cold silence pressing against the windshield. I don't even think I cried. It wasn't shock exactly. More like emotional vertigo. The world had spun so suddenly that I wasn't sure which way was up anymore. I pulled into my brother Nate's driveway a little past midnight. His porch light was still on. He must have been waiting. He opened the door before I knocked. One look at my face and he stepped aside without a word. Nate wasn't the hug you and ask a million questions type. He was a grab a blanket and leave the couch light on kind of guy, which honestly was exactly what I needed. I crashed on the pullout in his guest room, fully clothed. I stared at the ceiling for hours, wide awake and wired with a strange energy I couldn't burn off. The image of her. Hair damp, hoodie zipped halfway, eyes tired and annoyed. Played over and over like a looped video I didn't ask to watch. Her words echoed louder. You've been checked out for months. Was that true? Had I been so distracted, so numb to our slow drift apart, that I hadn't even realized I was losing her? But even if I had been distant, hell, even if I'd been a terrible husband, how did that justify what she did? The lies? The secrecy? The laughter upstairs with another man while our wedding photo still sat on the nightstand? I thought betrayal would feel like fire, explosive and uncontrollable. But it wasn't like that. It was cold. It was sitting in the dark, replaying moments that now felt edited, scripted, fake. It was realizing that every time I told myself things would get better, she was already somewhere else, mentally checked out, emotionally relocated. The next morning I woke up early. The sun was barely up. Nate was still sleeping, so I let myself out quietly. I needed to move, to do something. I drove back to the house. She wasn't there. Good. I parked a block away. walked up the driveway like a stranger, and let myself in with my own key. I didn't even hesitate. I moved on autopilot. I went upstairs, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. A few days' worth of clothes, my work laptop, toiletries. I didn't linger. I didn't check drawers or flip through old notes or photo albums. That wasn't the point. I wasn't there to remember. I was there to leave. Before I walked out, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, right next to the fruit bowl we never kept full. The metal felt oddly heavy in my palm, like it had absorbed all the years, the vows, the silent dinners, the missed cues, the nights I pretended not to notice she didn't kiss me goodnight. I slid it onto the marble surface with a soft clink, then pulled out my house key. I hesitated for half a second, not because I wanted to stay, but because this was it, the end. No dramatic confrontation, no final showdown, no begging or bargaining. Just a clean, quiet exit. I dropped the key into the mailbox. Then I walked down the driveway, past the gray BMW still parked like it belonged there, and didn't look back. I stayed with Nate for 2 weeks. He didn't pry. He asked once, "You good?" And when I didn't answer, he just nodded and handed me a beer. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, watching basketball or making dumb comments about commercials. Other times he'd disappear for hours, giving me the space he knew I wasn't ready to ask for but desperately needed. I worked remotely, buried myself in code, attended meetings with my camera off. I told my manager I was dealing with a personal family issue, and he gave me space. I appreciated that. During the evenings, I'd lie awake thinking through everything. Not just the betrayal itself, but the hundreds of signs I'd ignored. I thought back to when she stopped calling me on lunch breaks, when she started going to networking events without inviting me, when she laughed harder at texts than she ever did at my jokes. How long had she been planning her exit before I noticed I was already outside? I kept wondering if I'd been naive, if staying quiet for the sake of peace made me complicit, if I should have fought harder, asked more questions, looked through her phone. Something I never did because I believed we were solid, because I believed her. The thing is, I don't think she was always lying. I think she wanted to love me. I think for a while she even tried. But people don't just flip a switch. They leave you gradually, one glance at a time, one little omission, one deflected question after another. Until one day you wake up and realize you're married to someone who's only married to your memory. I never heard from her directly during those 2 weeks. No calls, no messages, just silence. Part of me expected some kind of confrontation, maybe a voicemail, an apology, even an angry outburst. But nothing came. Instead, I got a text from an unknown number a few days in. "Hey Mark, it's Callie, Jenna's paralegal. She asked me to let you know she's giving you space and will reach out soon when things settle down. Callie." A message relayed through an assistant. That told me everything I needed to know. So I started making my own plans. I searched for short-term rentals and found a modest one-bedroom apartment not far from my old college neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and anonymous. I signed the lease, paid the deposit, and moved in the following weekend. Just me, my laptop, a couple suitcases, and a cheap coffee maker. It wasn't home, but it was mine. I made one final trip back to the house while Jenna was away. I sent her a message, the only one I ever sent her after walking out. "I'm coming by tomorrow afternoon to collect the rest of my stuff. Please don't be there." She replied with a single word. "Okay." When I arrived, the place was spotless. No trace of the chaos I'd felt that night. The coffee cup was gone. The music player unplugged. Her scent still lingered in the bedroom, faint and haunting. I packed the rest of my things in silence, loaded up my car, and stood one last time in the living room where we used to sit together, legs tangled, arguing over which movie to stream. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. Before I left, I took down a photo from the wall, one of the last ones we took together, smiling on a pier somewhere during a weekend trip I'd forgotten the details of. I stared at it for a while, then set it face down in a drawer. Let someone else decide what to do with it. I closed the front door for the last time and drove away. No slammed doors. No final words. Just silence. And that silence felt like the first honest thing in a very long time. The day I filed for divorce was overcast. I remember that because it felt appropriate, gray skies, no rain, just that flat, dull stillness that wraps around you like a thin coat. The kind you barely feel until you realize it's soaked into your skin. I hadn't spoken to Jenna since the day I packed the last of my things. No calls. No messages. Just silence between us, not angry, not bitter. Just dead air, like a radio tuned to a station that no longer existed. It was strange how quickly the absence of someone can become a kind of routine. I found my attorney through a recommendation from Nate. Her name was Claudia Rivers. Mid-40s, sharp, no nonsense. She'd seen it all, and it showed in the way she didn't flinch when I told her what had happened. I handed her a folder of documents, bank records, photos of the house, a printout of the marriage license. No **TS. No emails. No photos of Eli's car in the driveway. I didn't want to drag it through the mud. I'm not trying to punish her, I said. I just want it done. Quietly. She gave me a look, the kind professionals give when they're weighing the truth behind your words. Then she nodded. All right, she said. We'll keep it clean. You want to waive property claims? Yeah, I said. I don't want the house. Let her keep it. She scribbled something down. And joint accounts? I already moved my direct deposit. Left her the rest. Claudia paused. You're aware you're entitled to half? I don't want half, I said. I want out. She nodded again. No lecture, no judgment. Just business. We filed the paperwork that same week. In our state, with no children and a mutual agreement, the process was relatively simple. Just some forms, signatures, and a quiet countdown to finalization. 60 days, give or take. I didn't tell many people. A few close friends. My manager. Nate, obviously. Most were supportive in the way people are when they don't know what else to say. You're doing the right thing. You deserve better. Time heals everything. That kind of thing. The truth was, I wasn't looking for healing. Not yet. I was just trying to make it through each day without unraveling. One quiet step at a time. I started therapy. It wasn't something I ever pictured myself doing. I used to think therapy was for people who couldn't solve their own problems, and I was someone who fixed things for a living. But after 2 weeks in my empty apartment, eating takeout and listening to my own thoughts echo off the drywall, I realized I needed help sorting through the mess in my head. My therapist's name was Jalen. Mid-30s, calm voice, no clipboard. Just a chair, a notepad he never seemed to write in, and a knack for knowing when to say nothing. Our first few sessions were mostly quiet. I talked about the basics, the night I left, the months leading up to it, the sense of disconnection that had crept into our marriage like mold behind wallpaper. He never asked about Jenna directly. Instead, he asked about me. Who I thought I was in that relationship. What I'd lost, not just in terms of a partner, but in terms of self. At first, I didn't have an answer. But the more I sat with the silence, the more I realized how much of myself I'd given up without even noticing. Little things. Like how I used to play guitar before I felt like I had to work longer hours to keep up. Or how I stopped going on weekend hikes because she always had brunch plans. Or how I'd wait for her to ask about my day, and when she didn't, I just stopped offering. Somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that fading into the background was noble. That support meant invisibility. That loving someone meant letting go of everything else. Jalen didn't tell me I was wrong. He just let me see it. By the 3rd week, I started building routines again. Nothing dramatic. Just structure. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit by the window, and read a few pages of something that wasn't work-related. I rejoined my gym, the one I hadn't stepped foot in since 2021. I kept going to therapy, kept showing up for work, kept my world small and manageable. I didn't post anything online. Didn't text Jenna. Didn't check her socials. I didn't want to know what she was doing. Whether she had regrets. Whether Eli was still in the picture. It didn't matter. The point wasn't to make her miss me. The point was to stop missing myself. The divorce moved forward quietly. Jenna never contested anything. Through Claudia, I learned she had reviewed the terms, signed everything, and requested that it all remain low profile, no drama, as she put it. That made sense. Jenna always hated mess. She liked things clean. Polished. Controlled. I agreed. We scheduled the final signing at Claudia's office. Separate appointments. Mine was at 9 a.m. It was a simple stack of papers, nothing dramatic. Just a few signatures, initials here and there, and that was it. The end of a decade boiled down to 8 pages and a black pen. When it was done, Claudia slid me a manila envelope. Official copies, she said. I nodded. Thanks. As I stood to leave, she paused. You know, she said, most people expect this part to feel bigger. Does it ever? Sometimes. Mostly it just feels quiet. I gave a small smile. That tracks. I walked out of her office and into the pale morning light, holding my envelope like it was just another errand I checked off a list. Divorce, complete. What's next? Back at the apartment, I didn't open the envelope. I slid it into a drawer with old tax returns and forgot about it. The proof didn't matter. The moment already existed inside me. In the weeks that followed, I started to feel lighter. Not happy. Not free. Just unburdened. Like I was no longer carrying something that didn't belong to me. I made small upgrades to the apartment. Bought a new rug. Hung some prints. Picked out a bookshelf and filled it with titles I'd been meaning to read. None of it was flashy. It wasn't about reinventing myself, it was about remembering who I was before I disappeared into someone else's life. I reconnected with a few old friends. Got dinner with coworkers. Started saying yes to things I used to make excuses for: trivia nights, pickup games, weekend trips. The world felt quieter without her in it, but it also felt more mine. One night, I sat on my small balcony watching the city wind down. I had a drink in one hand, my phone in the other. A text popped up from an unknown number. "Hi. It's Jenna. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to check in. I hope you're okay. I'm in therapy now, if that means anything. Not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know I'm working on myself. I still think about you. I still care." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I deleted it. Not out of anger. Not even closure. Just because it didn't serve me anymore. The chapter had already closed. And I had no interest in reading it again.